Hello everyone, this is part 6 of What If Naruto Had the Ninetails and the Shinigami sealed inside him, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Naruto and Kaioraku walked down towards the first division where the head council member waited to start the meeting. The meeting was for captains and lieutenants, and since Nanao couldn't come, Naruto had to sub in for her. Naruto was really quiet, not wanting to offend anyone. As he looked at the other captains, he recognized two Ukitake and Byakuya, who reminded him of an older Sasuke. The rest of the captains and lieutenants were unknown to him. After a few hours of waiting, the doors had opened and the captains and lieutenants came in and sat in their seats. There was this long hall in the middle of the place and it covered most of the room. There was the Soul Society Gote 13 crest on a banner behind the first squad captain seat. The lieutenants sat beside their captains. Naruto sat beside an injured captain named Sajin Komamura. The part that freaked Naruto out that the captain was a fox, and that fox was huge. Sajin saw Naruto stare at him and the fox man gave the boy an evil glare which made Naruto start to get nervous. "What are you looking at?" Sajin deeply asked. Nothing, no nothing." Naruto stuttered and looked straight ahead of him. He saw that Byakuya was sitting in front of him. He then heard some commotion as the chatter amongst some people ceased. "Okay, everyone, silence, it is time to talk business," Shigekuni announced, silencing the whole table. "Now there have been reports of more Arrancar forming, these hollows are becoming more powerful, and someone is spinning off their masks," Shigekuni said. "Well, I think we should look into that, of course, but recently there have been outbreaks of violence between the towns, it's hard to contain these people. For some reason they're getting angry, could it just be the tension of this situation?" Ukitake said. "They're Ukitake, why would they have tension?" Kenpachi Zaraki, 11th squad captain, said and chuckled afterwards. "Well, just because they're don't mean their personalities go away, and with all this hollow and Arrancar stuff and with Aizen, Jin, and Tuzan departing, it's sort of hard to deal with. Aizen was the friend of many, so was Tuzan," Sajin said and sighed. "Yeah, you have a point, but they should hold in those feelings and just challenge someone to a friendly spar, not harm other stuff. And besides, those cowards weren't too friendly. They were getting pretty creepy up till the time that Ichigo kid came into the picture." Kenpachi replied. "Ichigo? Who is this guy? I've heard much about him but never seen him. Is he really as good as the rumors say he is?" Naruto thought, looking pretty distant from the whole conversation. "Hey, who's the brat?" Kenpachi announced as each captain and vice lieutenant turned towards Naruto, who sunk lower into his seat. Kaioraku stood up looking over at Naruto and grinning. "This is Naruto Uzumaki, for those who didn't meet him 2 years ago. He's been doing pretty good as a Soul Reaper," Kaioraku said. "It's in his blood," Byakuya said grimly, having a negative attitude towards Naruto. Kaioraku gave Byakuya a look meaning not to talk about that subject, which got Naruto curious. "Speaking of Soul Reapers, with Jin, Aizen, and Tuzan gone, there are 3 captain positions up for grabs. Who do you think deserves it?" Shigekuni asked the group. A silence overwhelmed. Random captains stood up to announce a member from their squad that has done a good job in what Whatif is doing and should be a captain. Kaioraku and Ukitake remained silent. They looked at each other, that looked at Naruto. The boy was shaking and his face a bit red and sweaty from the mini embarrassment of all the captains looking over at him, reminding him of the faces that he was given back at Konoha. Kaioraku stood up and so did Ukitake. They both nodded, thinking practically the same thing. Kaioraku was the one to say it though. "I think Naruto should get a shot for captain," Kaioraku said, with Ukitake nodding in agreement. Byakuya stood up and crossed his arms, then said, "He shouldn't be allowed to, he doesn't even have a bon, Kai." "Then I guess he'll just obtain a bon, Kai," Kaioraku said slowly as Naruto panicked. "Kaioraku-sensei, what are you doing?" Naruto whispered. "There's no way that boy," Byakuya said, pausing, looking at Naruto with a mean look, then continued, "could ever obtain bon, Kai, in such a short time. That's not true. In the length of 2 years Naruto had mastered the flash step and has become close to mastering sword techniques, and Kido. Only 2 years, it took you quite a while to do those, Byakuya, Kyoraku said and grinned, although he was practically bluffing since Naruto wasn't too close to mastering Kido Sent. He never attempted to learn new techniques for it. That's enough of this pointless argument. I have decided to give Naruto 1 month to learn Bon Kai. If he cannot obtain his Bon Kai by then, he won't become a captain, but if he does, he shall be the new captain of the 5th squad. Shigekuni said, which oddly made most captains surprised that the Grand Captain would make such an offer. The meeting was shortly finished as the captains and vice-captains slowly walked out. Naruto slipped out of the doors before Kyoraku, so he was leaning on a pillar waiting for his captain out of sensei to come out. Good luck, kid, Kenpachi said, passing Naruto. The two looked at each other, and the captain grinned then looked away. Seems like I won't be the only kid becoming a captain, Tushiro Hatsugaya of the 10th squad said as he passed Naruto. Kyoraku finally came out and Naruto immediately confronted him. At first Kyoraku basically ignored him for the moment and the two began to walk back to the 8th division. Kyoraku-sensei, what were you thinking? I'm not fit to be a captain, Naruto shouted as Ukitake slowly walked beside the two, eavesdropping. Of course you are, Naruto, you've been doing great this past 2 years, and you've really improved. All you need to do is take it one step further, Ukitake said, looking over at Naruto. I guess you're right, after all there's no backing out now. Naruto paused, thinking back at what Byakuya said about it being in his blood. He then looked up at Ukitake and at Kyoraku, directing the question towards both of them. When Byakuya said, "It is in my blood at being a good soul reaper," what exactly did he mean? Naruto asked. That question made Kyoraku and Ukitake get a serious like face, then the two looked down. Naruto, it's best if you ask Yoroiki, the cat that used to follow. She knows more about that than we do. She's probably over with your girlfriend at the 4th division. Kyoraku said, grinning. Girlfriend, you mean Sakura? Naruto said, stuttering and getting a bit red. The two chuckled and after a while Naruto strolled off to the 4th division. Naruto had realized how long it's been since he saw Yoroiki. Ever since he went off to find Sasuke, they have never seen each other. Too bad that the visit won't be just to catch up. Naruto had made it to the 4th division and saw Yoroiki on a rooftop looking at the moon, which was a crescent. Naruto flash stepped beside Yoroiki, which startled her a bit. The two looked at each other and paused for a bit. Naruto then said, Yoroiki, I need to ask you something. And what is that? When I was at a meeting, Kyoraku said I was a good soul reaper, then Byakuya said it was in my blood. Do you know anything about this? Naruto asked and Yoroiki fell silent. I guess it's time for the truth to slip out finally. This is a conversation we need to have face to face. Let me get my clothes, Yoroiki said, disappearing and reappearing in her human form, which never ceased to amaze Naruto. The boy was always caught staring at her when she transformed. He couldn't help it, she was hot. Now, it's time to tell you the story, but let's go somewhere private. Follow me, Yoroiki said as the two flash stepped to the ridge of the walls of the Whole Soul Society. Now this is a long story, so I hope you have some time on your hands. This is about your father and your mother. The reason I know them was cause, well, I shouldn't spoil it for you, Yoroiki said, and then began with the story. Your mission is simple. Apparently an outbreak of hollows have invaded near Konoha. They have a caliber only the stealth squad can deal with. Minato, you and your squad go on and take care of those. We will aid backup if needed, Suafon said as she dismissed Minato and his 5-man squad. The long blonde-haired man led his squad towards Konoha as they were heading towards the scene of the hollows. Minato grasped his yellow-hilted katana as he looked straight ahead, sensing their presence. A lot has changed, hasn't it, Minato? A voice said, coming from behind Minato. It sure has, with Yoroiki, Urahara, Shinji and the others who got visit left. Lot of changing had to be done, Minato said as he looked to see his right-hand man and his only good friend in his squad, Orochimaru. Before you all go and say Orochimaru wasn't an adult during Minato's time, I want to remind you all that they are soul reapers and age slowly. Minato is a bit older than Orochimaru, but, yeah, you guys should get where I'm going. There they are, Orochimaru said, pointing at 3 big hollows slowly marching towards the gates of Konoha. The snake man drew his Zanpakuto, Kusanagi, and waited for Minato's signal. Minato unsheathed his yellow-hilted katana, Harashin, and flash stepped towards the hollows. Orochimaru and the other men from his squad did the same. The squad members all ganged up on one hollow while Orochimaru and Minato took their own separate beasts to deal with. Minato simply drifted back, parrying from each of the hollow's attacks, and then slicing at the air in random directions, sheathing his sword as those SS were found on the hollow's body as blood gushed out. Minato teleported behind the hollow and SD at the back of his head deeply, making the hollow disappear. Minato looked back and saw that all but 2 of his men had SD. Orochimaru had finished off his hollow just as fast as Minato. Orochimaru was a prodigy just like the blonde-haired stealth soldier. Minato grinned but then saw that the hollow attempted to finish off one of his team members. Minato teleported between the two and esped the hollow in the face, then spun around and slashed it in the chest. The hollow then stomped on the ground and shook the whole area, then sent a red blast aiming at the 2 of them. Minato picked his squad member up and dove to the right, flying upwards from the seismic wave. The blonde-haired man flash-stepped to grab his sword and esped the hollow's mask with his Ryatsu flowing through his blade. The mask disintegrated and the hollow disappeared in defeat. Why did you help him? You know what Suafon says about helping a teammate when it's practically inevitable that he will s. Orochimaru said, walking towards him. That rule is a bit harsh and it's something I don't go by. Now let's report back to Suafon, maybe we'll get a break from this stuff. Minato said and helped his other teammate up, and the 3 went back to the Soul Society. Minato continued to walk down, heading towards the 2nd division, and he passed Ginrei Kuchiki, father of Byakuya Kuchiki. The 2 looked at each other from the corner of their eye. They both hated each other's guts. Each thought their attitude was not suitable for the job they had taken. Minato then grinned and shook his head as he continued to walk. Orochimaru looked at him, then at Ginrei. What's with you and Captain Ginrei? Orochimaru asked. Let's just say we go back. He hates my attitude and what I do in my missions. I hate how he's the laws be. So basically we're at each other's trip 24/7. One day that man will learn. Minato said, as the rest of the way was silent for the 3 when they reported back to Suafon. So your mission went well, it must have been. With Minato by your side, the mission being completed in this time is quite common. Suafon said and smiled. The mission went well with the exception of 2 casualties. The hollows were a bit stronger at the time, I don't know why, but they're gone now. Minato said, grinning a bit. Well, other than that unfortunate event happening to your squad, the mission was basically perfect. We don't have much left to do, so you all can have a break today. Suafon said and dismissed them all. Minato and Orochimaru walked out of the 2nd division and began to talk while walking around. They eventually jumped up to a building and just sat on top of it and talked for at least an hour. They then went to the training field and started to train. Minato always sparred Orochimaru for some practice since the 2 were evenly matched. They then stopped to see the 6th squad captain Ginrei walk over, but this time a 10 or 12-year-old boy was beside him. Who's the boy, Captain Ginrei? Orochimaru asked in curiosity. My grandson and future 6th squad captain Byakuya Kuchiki. I'm teaching him everything I know since I don't have much long to live, as you all should know. Ginrei replied, keeping his eyes on Minato. Well, what are you doing here, Captain Ginrei? Minato said, walking up to him. With his mask, Ginrei could only see some strands of his hair and his blue eyes. For some reason he hardly took his mask off, which was a part of his stealth uniform. To see what my favorite stealth forces member was doing, of course, Ginrei sarcastically said, then sped his mask off and threw it down to the ground. He then said, I don't have much long to live, and I'll be damned if I'm ked by age. Now we both have our differences and we both basically hate each other. I'm about to give you an offer that you can't refuse, Minato Namikaze, Ginrei said, then grinned as his grandson stepped back. Oh really? Do tell, because if it's what I think it is I would love to hear it. Minato said, grinning while picking up his Zanpakuto. Fight me, Minato Namikaze, to the death, Ginrei said, which surprised Byakuya and made him step back. It also surprised Orochimaru. You're on, Captain Ginrei, Minato said, then looked over at Orochimaru. Orochimaru, it's best if you get back, this could get ugly. Minato said, grinning. Take Byakuya along with you, Orochimaru, a safe place where you can watch the fight. Ginrei said as he unsheathed his Zanpakuto, which vaguely resembles Byakuya's. This is the first time I've fought a captain. Sure, I might be strong on my own, but he is captain for a reason. Best stay on my guard. Minato said to himself as he gripped his blade and got in a deep stance, after each drifting back to a reasonable position between the 2. This kid is supposed to be some sort of master swordsman in the stealth forces. This shall be fun. Ginrei said as he stood straight, holding his sword in a ready position. Come Minato, Namikaze. Ginrei said as he pointed his sword out at him. The sword is Byakuya's future sword. Ginrei gave it to him as a gift or something like that. Minato flash stepped over to Ginrei, but it was faster than just a regular flash step, which surprised the Kuchiki. They clashed blades. Minato's speed added extra force, which made Ginrei slide back just a bit. Ginrei increased his Ryatsu and thrusted forward, making Minato fly to the other edge. Minato looked down, seeing that they were on a cliff hovering over the Soul Society. This is where the executions happen. The Stealth Force Shinigami then focused his attention back at Ginrei, who already was up in front of him and was about to slash at him upward. I can't dodge, I'm gonna have to jump, Minato said as he drifted back off the cliff. As the Stealth Force Shinigami was in mid-air, he flash stepped all the way behind Ginrei and attempted to slash his back. The Kuchiki spun around and clashed blades with him. They then began to slash at each other violently, but none of them hit each other. Minato predicted the next S from Ginrei and dodged it, and then sweep-kicked Ginrei and attempted to S the captain in the chest. Ginrei immediately flash-stepped and appeared in mid-air a few feet behind Minato. Minato spun around and flash-stepped towards Ginrei, going insanely faster than a regular flash-step user. Ginrei squinted his wrinkled eyes and then slashed the blonde Shinigami in the shoulder, and kicked him down. I figured you out, Minato. You use your flash step as a boost when you run, making you go at the speeds you go, but if I look at your feet I know the direction you're going to and I can easily counter. Ginrei said and grinned that landed on the ground and pointed his sword at him. Congratulations, you'll see that I have a lot of tricks up my sleeve, Minato said and grinned. The two then continued to slash violently at each other, none of them getting a hit. Minato's wound slowed his movements as the blood gushed out from time to time. When Ginrei horizontally slashed Minato, the Stealth Force fighter jumped and gently placed his feet on the blade. He then slashed across the captain's face. That left a mark from his right to left face cheek. Ginrei stepped back and Minato thrusted his palm at the captain, making a burst of Ryatsu, making him fly back. Minato then flash-stepped over to Ginrei and kicked him in the back of the head, then spun around and close-lined him down. Orochimaru and the young Byakuya were looking at the fight. Orochimaru looked over at Byakuya and saw the hint of worry in the boy's eyes. Orochimaru stared at him for a bit, then shook his head and looked back over at the fight. With no Shikai or Bon Kai, you sure make a good opponent, Minato, Ginrei said, quickly rolling to the right and getting up. The two started to circle each other, raising their swords a bit to their sternum and never letting the guard down. They slowly paced, watching their hands and feet, wondering when they will charge and strike and planning out possible counters. Minato knew the risks for losing this fight and he wasn't about to S here. It wasn't his time. Minato quickly stomped his foot, making Ginrei halfway charge at him. Minato immediately flash-stepped and appeared crouched down below Ginrei. Minato then took the opportunity, slicing at the captain's N, barely avoiding a slash to his wound. Minato then saw Ginrei holding his sword vertically, then closing his eyes. Scatter, Senbonzakura, Ginrei said as the blade of his sword turned pink and turned into petals that swarmed around him. Ginrei then opened his eyes and looked straight at Minato. Now US. Minato then looked up to see a pillar-like form of petals attempt to crash down on the blonde Shinigami. Minato rolled to the right, then jumping high into the air to avoid another petal pillar. Minato swung his sword at a wave of petals, trying to overpower it, but it was way too strong and it hit him and sent him flying high into the air. He unleashed his Shikai. Now I'm screwed, gotta find a way to hit him, Minato said as he started to plummet, having multiple waves and pillars of petals charging at him. Minato spun around, avoiding the waves and getting smacked to the ground by a pillar, making an indentation of his body on the ground when he landed. Sharp tentacle-like petals swarmed around Minato's unmoving body. The Shinigami stood up and immediately flash-stepped, running quicker as the Ryatsu formed around his whole arm. The Ryatsu formed into an orb before Minato got close to his target. He then thrusted the Ryatsu orb, aiming at Ginrei's chest, but the Kuchiki immediately put up a petal pillar to guard him. It immediately made a huge explosion when the two techniques collided. Orochimaru and Byakuya both had to shield themselves from the smokes and impending debris. The two looked as the smoke slowly cleared. Once the smoke was cleared, the pink petal pillar had been breached and partially destroyed. Minato's sleeve was sped and his arm was blooding. His other hand held his sword, which was espered into the ground. Minato was panting as Ginrei was looking at Minato in shock as half of the captain's ribs were bruised and his captain's haori stained. No way, you condensed your Ryatsu to form an arm's length of it to an orb, how? Ginrei asked after coughing up some blood. I still haven't worked it out, that's as far as I got with my new technique, the Rasengan. Minato said panting as he quickly pulled his hand out of the position it was in and quickly drifted back. His arm was numb, he was worried that he couldn't feel it, but he was glad that he got his technique to deal as much damage as it did. Minato grinned at the sight of his old adversary bleeding and in pain. For some sick reason it brought joy to him that he hurt him like that, and he was also one step away from winning this fight. I just gotta keep moving and provoke him to use a lot of energy of his Shikai, eventually he'll lose it, Minato thought. If that brat thinks I'm done for just because of this, he's wrong. Ginrei said under his breath and he shot multiple medium-sized petal pillars. Minato jumped up in the sky and flash-stepped diagonally and slashed at Ginrei. A petal shield blocked the attack, the petals flew everywhere with the sword attempting to dig through. Minato increased his Ryatsu little by little to see how much it took for him to S through. It took a lot and Minato stopped before he would collapse exhausted. Minato jumped back and was hit by an incoming pillar and was almost thrown off the edge. Another pillar came to try and crash down on him. Minato flash-stepped away, having a little section of the cliff crumble. Minato then started to circle around him, condensing his Ryatsu to make the afterimages to clones that randomly attacked Ginrei, only to get swatted by the petal pillars. Minato made one last afterimage clone to attack Ginrei. Once that clone was about to get hit, Minato thrusted over towards Ginrei and attempted to S the captain's wound. He was immediately slammed back, then rapidly cut by some sharp petal needles. Half of his torso sped and scratches appeared all over his chest and some on his face. He was then slung to the ground as the old Kuchiki looked over at him. I can see right through you, Minato, you can't win. Ginrei said, grinning. Minato espied his sword in the ground and panted, not bothering to say a word as he slowly lifted himself up. Minato took his sword out of the ground and pointed it at Ginrei. Come on, hit me with your best shot, Minato roughly said, panting still. Very well, Ginrei said, grinning. Minato could see his desperation in this fight growing with each second as his Ryatsu began to fade. Ginrei had his sword appear in his hands as the petals gracefully fell to the ground. His sword dropped straight down and into the ground, making a wave-like motion where it fell. The area Ginrei and Minato were in was a black prism-like thing, with 4 rows of a bright pink version made out of the pink petals. The swords were exactly like the old Kuchiki's swords and there were a lot of them. Minato looked around, with his right arm completely numb and his stamina decreasing with every passing second. He was getting worried as he entered the Kuchiki's Bon Kai. Like the view inside this place, Minato. 'Cause it's the last thing you'll ever see. Ginrei said, then evilly grinned at Minato, which made him cringe. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.